Good morning. Good morning. And it's good to see you all here today. So um, last week we started talking about a a writing by Eihei Dōgen, the 13th century Zen teacher, and this was the last fascicle or chapter that he composed during his life. Um, in a rather long work called the Shōbōgenzō. And this particular chapter is based heavily on a sutra from much earlier, from China, that were purportedly about the Buddha's, Shakyamuni Buddha's final moments and his final words to his disciples. So, in a way, Dogen was expressing some final words to his disciples, who in the audience were, at this time at least, all monastics. They were monks. And he was trying to condense what he called the characteristics or the qualities of a great person. And the translation I'm going from mostly is that by Tom Wright in a book called The Roots of Goodness, where Tom Wright's translation is included with a very personal commentary by Uchiyama Roshi, Tom's teacher. So the last week we talked about the first of these qualities, which is having few desires, having few desires. And the second one is closely related. It's complementary in a way. It's knowing one has enough. Chizoku, knowing one has enough. So I think I'll just read, it's a short section. I'll just read this as Tom Wright translated it. And then I think I'll read a second translation for comparison. Knowing one has enough. The second realization of a great person is knowing when one has enough, limiting how much to accept of the things one has already received, and in knowing one has enough. The Buddha has said, monks, if you wish to be rid of various pain and suffering, then you need to see clearly that you have enough. This Dharma of knowing when one has enough is precisely where you will find the greatest wealth, happiness, and peace of mind. Despite having to sleep on the ground, a person who knows when to be satisfied will find comfort and be at ease. And to the contrary, a person who does not know what is sufficient will never be at ease and always be unsatisfied, even if they live in a gorgeous mansion. Despite having great wealth, a person not knowing when to be satisfied is in fact impoverished. On the other hand, though a person may be materially poor, if they know what it means to have enough, then that person is truly rich. One who does not know having enough will always be pulled around by the five senses, only to be pitied by those who understand the meaning of having enough. This is what is referred to as knowing one has enough. So in various translations, um, having enough is translated in terms of contentment or satisfaction. And this translation by Yuhu Yokoi is um, is a little different and just casts a slightly different light on the paragraph. The second is satisfaction. This means to be satisfied with whatever one has. The Buddha said, "Monks, if you wish to escape from suffering, you should bear satisfaction in mind. To be satisfied is to have a happy and peaceful state of mind. A satisfied person is happy even though he must sleep on the ground. An unsatisfied person, however, even though he lives in a palatial mansion, is unhappy. Though the latter be rich, he is really poor. Though the former be poor, he is really rich. A satisfied person takes pity on an unsatisfied person because the latter is continually enslaved to the five desires. Such is the nature of satisfaction." So, knowing knowing what is enough. Well, enough of what? I think the language in these translations needs me to believe that he's talking primarily about material goods, although could be talking about other things such as prestige or power or any number of things. But I think the main intent was to talk about material things. And I think this is related in a way to the first quality of a great person, that of having few desires, in which we were instructed to be aware of desire arising and curate our desires, those that are useful, beneficial, wholesome, versus those that are not, and restrain desires that are not helpful, wholesome, useful, beneficial, and pare them down to a small set, a relatively small set of desires. So it's kind of a qualitative assessment. And this second quality of a great person has to do with a more quantitative assessment. How much is enough? I think it's important to remember that the audience for both of these teachings, both that offered by the Shakyamuni Buddha, purportedly, and that offered by Dogen, the audience are monastics, they're monks, home leavers, those who have in a sense taken a vow of poverty, and the only things they have are their set of robes and their begging bowl. Now, clearly, lay people can't live that way. And monastics couldn't live that way either if it weren't for lay people. We can't all be beggars. So, um, I think whereas these teachings uh, are relevant, I think, to a lay audience, they have to be taken in a certain context and adapted. And I think that's true of many of the teachings. So, um, how much is enough? Um, and this is clearly related to contentment and satisfaction. If the mind is proposing that I don't have enough, then it creates a certain unease. Whereas if you feel like, well, I have enough, then there's a certain relaxation and peace. No, I think it's important to not overgeneralize and extend these to the point of thinking, well, you should be contented with whatever. I mean, if the kitchen is a mess, it's appropriate to clean it up. And if you're in a situation that's abusive, it's important to try to address that, either either mend it in some way or get out of it. But being aware of just keeping in mind how much is enough is the message. Yeah, at the beginning of COVID, um, I was still working at that time and was taking a walk through St. Charles at noon. And just noticed there was a woman who ran a little free library in her front yard. She had a little box with books. Perhaps you've seen that it's not a novel idea. I've seen this in other neighborhoods as well, but this one was kind of charming, and I had noticed it in the past with a few books in it. So I was walking in the spring of 2020, and went by the little box and noticed that she had replaced the books with some rolls of toilet paper. Now, um, perhaps, and I suspect all of you remember the early days of COVID when you would go to the grocery store and the shelves that normally stock toilet paper were empty, and people were concerned about not having enough. As humans, we naturally can think about the future. And obviously, we're not, it's not just humans that do this. I mean, squirrels pack away acorns in the fall and that sort of thing, thinking about the winter. But um, humans, I think, are especially prone to thinking about the future and worrying about whether there will be enough. Um, this woman was trying to address those concerns that people had. Uh, It's now been about 4 years since I retired, and going through retirement was interesting because it's a time of transition from, for me anyway, getting a regular paycheck to thinking about um, how am I going to live the rest of my life on what I currently have. Not quite that simple, but basically that's the concern. And of course, being able to retire is a luxury in itself, and I appreciated that. But it did arouse some concern about, well, how am I going to apportion what I have? And it can often lead to a sort of an attitude of scarcity, an attitude of scarcity where you think, well, maybe I won't have enough. And some of that is quite realistic because we don't know the future. We don't, there are so many factors involved that try as you might and plan as you might, you can't take everything into account. There are things that are sort of inevitable, and but even those, I mean, death is inevitable, but you don't know when it's going to come and how many years you need to plan for. Um, and um, and then there are things that just sort of come out of the blue that you can't even imagine happening, that could happen. And you don't have, I mean, you have historical information about the rate of inflation, and if you're fortunate enough to have investments, you have historical information about return on investment, but that is of limited use. It's hard to know how to apply it to the future that is so fundamentally unknowable. So as it comes down, you end up making some sort of reasonable accommodation with this uncertainty and going with it. But it can still be accompanied by a certain concern about how much is enough. I think I think there are practical ways to quell that. I guess one very practical thing is to shop the pantry. You use what you have. Um, we have some food items stored down in the basement because there's insufficient room in the kitchen for various things, and uh, going downstairs and checking, seeing what we have, and finding, oh, we have more than enough. Another thing is just an attitude of gratitude for what one has, placing it in a larger context of what is really needed for this life, and just going through the blessings, that which we have received, and maintaining that attitude from day to day. So, how much is enough? I think it's important to also keep in mind that really all of these teachings, these especially practical teachings that the Buddha has voiced, how they are to be used. They're to be used for personal advice. The Buddha's mission was to relieve suffering for himself and others, for us. These teachings can, I think, be misused if we start applying them to others in a way, saying, well, you have more than enough. You have more than your share. In other words, sort of weaponizing the precepts. They're to be used as a personal guide. Now, we may indeed think that some people have more than enough, and no doubt some people do have more than enough. But that is not the intent of the Buddha's teachings. And that can lead to all kinds of problems when that kind of thinking is thoroughly unleashed. So there for us, how much is enough? How do we decide how much is enough? There's a little section from the original sutra from which Dogen draws this teaching. In the sort of the preamble part, it says, bhikkhus, monks, should be the same way as bees gathering from flowers, only taking the pollen without harming their form or scent. Receive people's offerings to put an end to distress, hunger, but do not seek to obtain too much and spoil their good hearts. Be like a wise person who, having estimated the load that suits the strength of the ox, does not exceed that amount and exhaust its strength. So knowing how much is enough. Um, I think I'll stop there. Although after I finish the recording, I will, because I could not resist it, put on a short 2-minute video and leave you with the question as we go into the breakout rooms of how much is enough, and what has been your experience with deciding how much is enough. So thank you very much for listening today, and I'll see you shortly. And likewise, and as I said, I'll be putting on a short